Hi, it's Gadget UK here again. Super windy, as you can hear. I am sorry about the weather. You can see here we've got a Bluster from Live 2. So, a lovely PCB that he's sent me there, free of charge, with some of the bits he sent me. The AT card, you may have seen that. That may follow this video if you haven't already seen it. Anyway, I'll put a link up there when it's available. Yeah, you can see we've got the JTAG header there. We've got room for a little CPLD here, a Xilinx chip. And we've got two strips of pin header required to be soldered on here. I think it goes this way up, and then this is going to go into the Bluster socket on an Amiga 2000. So it's a replacement Bluster. It's amazing. It's so simple as well. There's so few components on there. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 caps, I think, and then the voltage regulator. So I've just gone and got an AMS 1117, so 3.3 volts. It's a 3.3 volt one, regulator to fit on there. I think those are quite hard to find now, but I've got about 50 of them, so I'm alright for stock. Solder the two strips of this on. I've got the, well, equivalents here, and I've got two bits that I just had as odds and ends that were left over, which just happened to be the correct number of pins to fit there. But we'll solder those on last, I think. We'll get the CPLD on first. I've got the CPLD in here, I think, yeah. And then we'll get the little SMD caps, and we'll finish off with the strips here, and obviously the JTAG. Now the JTAG, rather than have something stick out and have pins out of here so that I can plug my header on, I'm just going to leave the holes there, and then my program has got one of these plugged in the end. I can literally just push it in, hold the board at an angle to make good connection, program it up, and then we should have a replacement Bluster. We'll test this on a few different Zorro cards. I'll have a quick look at the code and stuff as well. It's open source, this. Matt is an amazing guy. More so the fact that he open sources all this stuff. So in advance of this arriving, I obviously had a look at Matt's GitHub page. There'll be a link down below, so you can see the bill of materials here, CPLD, capacitors. That's it. Very little. And I also went as far as having a look at the code here as well. So if we're going to RTL, yeah, Bluster.v, yeah, there we go. The first thing is that made me laugh there. Busting makes me feel good. Yeah, insert Ghostbusters music here. So Bluster CPLD replacement for Amiga. Copyright 2021, Matthew Harlum. Fantastic work. So yeah, I spent some time just having a look through this, and most of it I can follow. I'm not always familiar with the syntax of VHDL or whatever this is. Yeah, there's this bit here, arbitration, here be dragons. I am not 100% sure about coprocessor logic here, and have no good way of testing it. So this hopefully is going to be the benefit of testing with something in the coprocessor slot, namely the A2630. So, you know, you've done some speculation here with regards to BOS and the bus grant stuff. Yeah, so I think there was a little bit of guesswork here. As he said, he's not able to test that fully, but hopefully we'll be able to prove one way or another whether it works or not. But there's not a lot, is there? I mean, when I say there's not a lot, some of it's complex, and obviously it needs some thought to get something like this into existence. So yeah, very much appreciated, Matt. So I'm sorry the print is really small there. There's Bluster. This is the Rev 6 A2000 schematics. And I guess it's worth just highlighting, you know, what would you want to use this for? Well, the obvious one is if you've got a faulty Bluster, you could replace it with the Bluster. But also, if you want to build a 2000, you could buy, you know, one of the modern 2000 remakes, and you could build one from components from a 500. Now, the only thing you'd be lacking is a Bluster. So that's useful too. In theory, you could actually modify a 500 to add a Bluster. I'm not saying it would be easy, and turn a 500 into the equivalent of a 2000. You know, and you do something like that after the Matsy side thing with the Zorro slots, but you could have more than one Zorro slot. You may even be able to do it from the expansion slot. So on the right hand side here, you can see a couple of output enables that are critical there. Is it DOE and DBOE, something like that. So then you've got BR and BG connections here. There's 5 of each, one for each slot, and then you've got the slave pins here, one for each slot. There's those are just address lines, I think, and then some control signals and stuff, you know, like BG, reset, UDS, LDS, etc. Something equivalent of the read-write. I think this may produce a read-write signal for the slots, actually. And then on the page with the slots here, you can't quite see it, but those connections, they come in sort of down here, one to each slot for each of the ones I just mentioned. But looking at the 245s here, you know, that buffer Zorro and also the processor slot, the output enables are the ones I first mentioned there. It's DOE and DBOE. Those are controlled here, yeah, and maybe even the read-write may come from Bluster for those as well. So Bluster is absolutely central part of arbitration for the slots. Without that, let's say these things here are going to act in a weird way. You know, they're probably going to have a low on their output enables, therefore they're going to be outputting perhaps the data bus, and I think that's why you get a yellow screen if you've got a problem around there, or a problem with Bluster. And Bluster doesn't do all the Zorro stuff on its own. You've got the eInt stuff here, so this is how the decoding or encoding works for the eInt connections. You've got 4 different e-interrupts there, extended interrupts of some sort, and there's some muxing or demuxing going on to get your IPL lines out to the CPU. So yeah, that's the interrupt bit, but that's just some discrete 7/4 logic. So I mean, if you were trying to modify a 500 to add a Bluster, you'd have to replicate this stuff as well as all of the crazy millions of connections for all the Zorro slots. So I believe pin 1 is there. Sorry, at the point where I'm touching that pin in this corner here. So I need to rotate this round to get the dot that's on the package that way around, and then it's of course, you know, just micro adjusting it under magnification. And these are very, very fine soldering iron, and solder one pin, just inspect it all, then do another one, and from there we should be able to just drag solder. I'll show you some of that once I've got that anchored. So I did exactly as I described there. Got a solder point there, a solder point there. So we'll just get some flux around this and just drag solder, and hopefully the trees won't come down on me while I'm doing it. So I've got you on macro there. I need to be careful not to touch the lens here. Actually, just get a little bit of solder on there, and I'll try and hold this down. And I'm going to just do a slow drag. You know, I already feel like I've got too much solder there, to be fair. Yeah, just there is too much. But yeah, that's not too bad. I just need to inspect with magnification, because you know what, I cannot see what I'm doing here. I'm trying to look through the viewfinder. It is impossible. There is definitely too much on the end there though. I'm having to use magnification to do this. So I've got a load of solder there, so I'm just going to get it off the tip. I don't need any more because I've got a bunch of pins with solder on. I can feel the heat transferring through to the other side, by the way, if you're wondering about the fingers. There we go, they're not so bad. It's just the end there, we've got a couple of pins bridged. Keep removing the solder and then just having a bit of a slide around. You may get it off without using braid. There we go. I prefer to do that because when you use braid, you can end up unintentionally just removing a bit too much solder, and then you get a bad connection on one pin. Yeah, but yeah, not sure you can see that there, that side. 3 sides done, just got this side to do. Of course, I do need to unblock 1 or 2 pins just near the solder points on the edges there, where a bit of solder's leaked in there. I'm not going to be able to get the pin header on if I don't unblock the holes. But before I stick those on, I'll stick the caps next. The caps and the regulator. Do the regulator first and then the caps. There we go. I'll give you a super macro afterwards, but you can see that's not looking bad. So the 3.3 volt regulator should be straightforward to get this on. There you go. I did that just by literally throwing it into position. It may move once I add some solder here. Let's just do the middle pin first. I'm not touching the actual component. I'm trying to just touch the edge of the pad. Oh, I moved it, look. Let's just add the solder there anyway. We can wobble it around a little bit until it's in position. A bit further up that way, I think. Yeah, that's not too bad, just a little micro adjust still. Bit more. That'll do. so I'll get some solder there. I always put pretty blobby solder on these regulators because they will get hot. A linear regulator will convert the difference of the input voltage, you know, from what it's outputting, and burn that off in a number of watts. So 5 down to 3.3, you get heat dumped into the board. So the more solder you got there, you'll just get a better heat sink into the board. That's not too bad. Could always just get a little bit of flux on there and reflow. Right, in fact, let's just do that. We may as well while we're here. The tab's alright, but I just want a little bit. What is going on with this flux? It's just not coming out. Something's happened to this tube, I don't know what. Yeah, I'm having to squeeze a lot harder than normal. And then I'll just use the Antex here because I like the shape of the tip actually. It just gives a much better reflow. Yeah, that'll do. Right, I am nearing completion here. You can see I got the 400 nanofarad caps on there. Now, I didn't have the exact size caps for here on the regular. I think it was supposed to be a 4.7 and a 10. I ended up with a 1 on the output side, which is more than enough. We've got 100 nanofarads there and a 1 on that. That's going to be fine. On the bigger one down there is a 22, so it's not a 10, it's a bit bigger. So it's bigger on the input side, I think, and smaller on the output side, but it should be fine. It's not that critical. Well, at least I think it isn't. It shouldn't be. My experience of things like that, yeah, tells me that'll be alright. So I need to get this on now, don't I? So what I'm going to do with this is just use this, well, it's conveniently nearby this socket, and just try and get it across the middle of these here so that it holds everything in place while I solder. You can see straight away that that's not gone in. So I should carefully push that on. It's not gone on there very well, has it? Yeah, there we go. That's just going to hold everything nice and straight. Let's just double check that. Sometimes with this pin header you can find it sinks down a bit, so it's really important to make sure that it's, you know, it's flush with the PCB on both sides. Yeah, that's right, there's a bent pin there, look, it's a little bit bent, but that should be okay. So we'll anchor it first of all in a few places on the corners maybe. And then I'll just inspect it. Same over here. I'm at a funny angle here, it's making it a little bit difficult to do. There we go. Yeah, that's looking alright. And then I'll also anchor it in the middle here. And then I can just commit to soldering the other points, but yeah, that's going to be okay. Right, after a minute or two, we are all done there. So I just need to now disconnect the socket, so I'm just going to use the pliers here just to help prise like that. A little bit on each side. You can see it's getting stuck in the middle a little bit, which is bound to do, but it will come off. There we go, it's come back on a bit here, look, there we go. Now, so socket off, put that out of the way. Yeah, there we go, nice and straight. So the final thing is just to clean up now, so get some cotton buds and my toothbrush. So I'll clean up with a cotton bud first of all here, just to collect the majority of the flux off where I can, and then we'll get the toothbrush onto it. Yeah, so looking a bit streaky there, still a bit wet, isn't it? But we'll let that dry, and then I'll go and program that up. Still a bit of moisture under there, look. Now I can ultrasonic this later. Now, regards to the programming, I've shown it before on the TF330 video. There'll be a link top right to that. But there are a few things here. Obviously, we've got the JTAG connector here. So if I just bring the programmer, so you can see what I use. I use one of these platform cable USB from Xilinx. And I use Impact. You could use a Raspberry Pi. On Live2's GitHub page, there's, I think on this actual, on the Bluster page there actually, there's a guide to using a Raspberry Pi. So you could do that if you don't, you don't want to spend 20 or 30 quid on one of these and messing around with the, the rigmarole of installing Impact. But hopefully you can see, marked on the board, there's TMS, TDI, and they're in the same order. Yeah, TMS, TDI, TDO, TCK, ground, VCC. So you may think that just plugging that in there like that is sufficient. Now, there's a couple of things here. I mentioned it in an annotation earlier on. If you hold this at an angle, or you have some, you sit it in such a way that the pins make a connection like that, that's good enough to program. But if you lose the ground, you get latch up, you can kill the CPLD. So you've been warned. You may want to temporarily solder a socket or a pin header or something on there while you program it. The other thing I am about to do is, and I've just checked the connectivity here, ground is that pin there, bottom left, yeah, pin 1's at the top here, and that pin up there is 5 volts. You need to power the regulator on the underside with 5 volts. If you don't, the 3.3 volts won't be here. So when you connect this up to the PC and you run Impact and stuff, this LED will just be off or red, I think. So yeah, what I'm going to do is solder my little pin header here, solder the ground down there, VCC up there, and then I have this old phone cable I've shown you in a previous video that's just got a pin header, and you can pull the pins out. It's got either pins or sockets, look, and I can simply line that up like that. This will then be powered, then connect the JTAG and program it up. But the reason I would solder on these two wires here is the point I mentioned earlier, that if you've got the cable just hanging in here, you're hoping for the best, yeah, you lose the ground, you get a latch-up scenario. So technically you could just join the 5 volts like that and just power it like that, because the ground on the USB is going to be joined the same as the JTAG, but then you could lose the ground here from a little bit of a bad connection. So it's advantageous to make sure you don't kill it with latch-up, to solder your power connector here, and make sure you've got a good 5 volts and ground. The only thing that's flaky then is the JTAG. If this just gets loose, you'll get a bad connection, it won't program. You can just keep retrying positioning it until you get it, connected properly and it's able to program. But it shouldn't die that way, but it will, as I say, if you've not got a good, reliable ground. Right, all is not going according to plan. I was about to program this up and do it a second time just to show you the process, and the board was getting hot. So I connected it up to my USB thing here. This will show the voltage and the current. Just powering it, that's all. And you can see I joined two wires off the ground and VCC, the 5 volt pin and the ground pin. And I was drawing an amp, and the board was getting hot. Nothing else was, the board was getting hot, so I thought it must be a short. So I spoke to Live2 and I remembered he'd previously just mentioned in passing that it uses a different regulator. So the AMS117, I'm just going to bin that. We'll put a brand new one on, but we're going to have to do some mapping there. Maybe you flip the chip around or something, or I'm not really sure. So I need to look at the pinout of both the AMS117 and the regulator that Live2's used there, and fit a new one. So I've got a new one here, and you can see obviously I had to put some Captain tape around here. If you're not aware, Captain tape is like heat reflective tape. It will resist passing heat through to the other side. So I had to do that in order to protect the cap there and the plastic edge of the connector. Right, so successfully programmed up. You can see here, that's the regulator. Yeah, I'm sorry it's not very clear as to how I've got that wired. Now, I drew the pinouts here, as you can see. So the AMS1117, you've got 3.3 volts on its tab, and then the pins from pin 1 to pin 3, you've got ground, 3.3, 5 volts. The chip that Live2's used has got ground on the tab instead of 3.3, 5 volts where the ground is, ground in the middle instead of 3.3, and 3.3 on the end there, which was 5 volts. So everything's flipped around there, isn't it? This is the thing. I was lucky this did not kill it. So when I had the 1117, the regulator was wired in such a way those two pins are joined, so yeah, that wouldn't have been a problem. Ground to ground, that wouldn't have shored anything out. But then the 5 volts and the 3.3 were flipped, weren't they? So yeah, that's why the board was getting hot. It was the PCB. The chip was stone cold, but the PCB was hot. So I showed you this thing. This was just in series here, so it's a USB thing. You plug a USB cable in. So I was using it for this, to monitor the 5 volts. That's all I was doing. Let's just put 5 volts in to see how much current it's drawing, and that was where it was drawing an amp. And as I say, you could smell something warming up, and just feeling around here, the whole PCB was hot. The regulator wasn't, strange enough. The PCB was hot. Yeah, alarm bells were ringing. So I've looked out in the sense that this has not died. It's fine. Yeah, so you can't really see exactly how I've got the wires there. It looks a bit of a mess. You know, I've had to route them in such a way they're not shorting, and they're remapped. We've swapped the 3.3 and the 5 and the ground around because they're all wrong. So I removed the Bluster from here. Now I've done a bit of preliminary testing here, and it does work, but I just thought I'd run through the mill here and just show you the process. So I tested on the other board originally. This is the Rev 6.2. Tested on the Rev 4, it all works fine. So pin 1 is up this way here. Now a word of warning, and I've talked about this so many times, this type of socket here will be, the gaps will be widened by these round pins. So one thing you could do if you wanted to protect the original socket is just get yourself another one of these sockets. I don't know how many pins that is it like 44 or 48 pins, something like that, and you could put a normal dip socket in there. It won't make a fantastic grip, but it will be firm enough to hold in place, and then you could stick this in the socket above. But because I just have every intention of leaving this on there, I'm just going to just stick it in. So let's just push it down like that. There we go. So it makes a really snug fit, but if we remove that and put the original Bluster in, it may be a little bit loose. So if we now switch that on, bear in mind there are no other cards or anything connected here. We've just got a stock CPU. So just give it, I don't know, 7 or 8 seconds, and it should throw up the sticker disc in screen. There we go. So it's a little bit over bright. It's pretty sunny here today. So straight away that shows us that the arbitration that this controls seems to be working at this stage, because if you test without a Bluster on a 2000, you will generally, I think you'll get a black screen or a yellow screen. I think a yellow screen is what springs to mind. And it's because one of the jobs that Bluster provides is, let's say, the arbitration, the control of, the direction and stuff of data passing and stuff, and whether these are enabled, the output enables on these, and the direction are probably in part controlled by Bluster. So that's why you get the problem. If you've not got Bluster there, these will perhaps be interfering with the data bus. So yeah, all signs are it looks okay on this board as it was on the version 4 you've not seen, but we'll just, let's say, run through the steps here and just test this with some Zorro cards now. So this is the A2630 from Oddbod. Let's get that in. There'll be a separate video on this. And we'll also get the A2091 here, Booty McBooterson, in there. This is a good test because this obviously is a Zorro card. It's doing DMA stuff on with the SCSI and the RAM and all that. So let's just get that in. And effectively, we've got an A2500 build here. That's the same sort of specs. And that's not strictly entirely true, actually, because I think the A2500, instead of an A2091, it was an A2090. So this is slightly better than the A29. Anyway, let's give that a try, and then we'll try adding a couple more Zorro cards, maybe the SID card and maybe the 8 meg RAM board from Live 2 or something. I can even have the IDE interface you've not seen yet. We'll try that. So just waiting to see if that is booting or not. And it's not, is it? Why is it not booting from SCSI? That's strange. So just try that again. Not sure why SCSI didn't boot there. So it's flashing now. Maybe it was a bad connection on the socket. Yeah, it's flashing away. So yeah, that was a bit strange. The first test I did there. Hang on. Yeah, it's flashing on the SCSI. Yeah, the first test I did there, it wasn't booting from SCSI, which is really weird. Anyway, let's just see what happens when we get to the desktop. There we go, booted okay. So we've got 6 meg there. We've got 4 meg on the A2630. And we've got 2 meg on the A2091. and obviously everything seems to be working. Try loading the time gal here. I'm sure you're sick of seeing the same things over and over, but I like to just run this because it hammers the disk a little bit. As the demo goes round here now, that's where you just start seeing loads of SCSI activity. Yeah, it's flashing away. So that's working, isn't it? That's a Bluster replacement, the Bluster, seems to work fine. It's also a really good test with this combination because we've got some DMA stuff going on. Anyway, I'll get the SID card in there next. Maybe the 8 meg RAM board from Live 2. So let's get the Live 2 card in now. I am not sure what is going to happen with auto config here. You know, is it going to give us a yellow screen? Is it going to work? Because I've showed this before, that when you've got lots of things in there, the order is really important sometimes. So let's switch it on. I'm just waiting to see if that's booting, and it is. Wait to get to the desktop, and hopefully we should have 8 meg, I think, instead of 6. Yeah, you can see the LED there. It sort of flickers a little bit as it goes through each of the drives, because there's 4 drives on this card, and then it should flicker like mad as it gets near the end of the boot. There we go, booting. So we're at the desktop. Let's see how much RAM we've got. There we go, 8 meg. So if we go into sysinfo, I mean, this is a bit of a pointless exercise, but I guess it's just to evidence and show you that all those boards coexist and stuff there. There we go. We've got a fair few just now. We've got, well, we've only got 3 things there. We've got the A2630, we've got the A2091, and then we've got product ID of 2, which is the Gotta Go Fast RAM. Yeah, so yeah, they're all coexisting nicely. So let's introduce the other 2 cards. So I've switched that off. The next thing to add is the SID card. Now this is just a basic I/O device, it doesn't use auto config. You wouldn't really expect this to have a problem, but nevertheless it'd be nice to try and test it. I want to route that wire around there like that. So yeah, there's obviously a video on the 8 meg Gotta Go Fast RAM, you've seen it. There's a video on the 2091, you've seen it, and a video on the SID card, and there'll also be a part 2 on the SID card as well. This is the newer version of the SID card. So I need to connect this up, don't I? There we go, I managed it. God, that was hard. So the way that SID card's configured, it just sits at EE address range, the top of the 24-bit range there. And then we've also got this that you haven't seen. There'll be a separate video on this as well. The board actually came from Live 2, but it's been designed, I think, by somebody else. It's one of the Matsei's products, I think, called Matthias. So obviously with this, we need a compact flash card. So let's get the TF530 card. I know that works with this, and we need obviously the adapter. So yeah, it's looking pretty packed out now though, isn't it? We've got 1 Zorro slot free. I'll have to think if I've got anything else I could stick in that last slot. Well, let's just plug this on the top there. Power is passed through on that, so yeah. So as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Zorro devices effectively. Bear in mind that doesn't use auto config. Switch it on. Yeah, I'm not sure that's booting actually. We might have a clash between the ID and the SCSI or something like that, because that is not booting. It's got to be something to do with this. Let's just move this up to the next slot maybe. So maybe in case it's a bad connection. It's not going to be the SID card interfering. Let's try that again. Yeah, we got a reset there. You heard that? Yeah, it was a bad power connection. What I do is, I'll show you in a minute. The power connector, I don't push it all the way on because you destroy the thing pulling it off. It's just because it's a cheap one from Amiga kit. The connector's in 2 parts and it can break in 2. And you can also damage the wires, but you can see that's booting. All I did to get that working was reseat the A2091, that didn't solve it, and then I reseated the power connector and bang, it's booting. And that's always going to be one of those things that if you have a bad power connector, it's you're going to get problems. Now, the interesting thing there is we don't see the IDE. These are all SCSI drives, although we've got 2 workbench drives. Look, it could be that the drives are overlapping. In other words, we've got multiple DH, 1s, 2s, etc. That's going to be the issue there. I'm trying to think how I could get around that. I mean, obviously I could rename them and stuff. You know, I could use HD Toolbox and change them. I thought these SCSI ones were DS, DS1, DS2, DS3, but they're not, are they? But that has worked. We have got IDE as well as SCSI, because we've got 2 lots of workbench here, look. So let me just go into Workbench there. Let's just have a look at HD Toolbox and see what's what. Yeah, that's looking at SCSI devices, I think, is it? I'm not really sure. Yeah, look, code source, those are the SCSI. Those are the SCSI. So, you know, I could change these. I just don't want to break my card. That one there, I think, is the IDE, actually. Yeah, that's right, because it's got a different thing listed there. Let's go into partition drive. Oh, look, it's DS0. Why is it coming up as DH0 then? I'm really confused. That's DS2. Maybe it's because the volume is the same. You know, it's not just about the partition device name, is it? Let's just exit out of that. It's interesting that once you've changed them, because those have been changed that way, like DH1. Well, it isn't DH1 now, isn't it? Can you rename it? Icons. Yeah, you can rename it. Bear in mind, if you do things like that, it can mess up the entire configuration of your drive, I think. You know, anything in the startup script that refers to DH1, 2, 3, 4, etc. You can have a problem. The simple solution is just to boot it without the SCSI. I'll just take the SCSI card out, we'll boot from IDE. So I know doing this, let's just switch that off. We're not going to be testing, I'll take the SD card out. Right, so the SD card's out, switch it back on. It should now boot from IDE. So I think it should fall back, and this should start flashing in a minute. Yeah, it's flashing on the SCSI, it's going flash, flash, flash. That's going to time out at some point. And then hopefully it should fall back to the next bootable device. And you can see what I mean there. That's what the SCSI to SD does. It just goes flash, flash, because there's no card in. But is there a timeout? There must be a timeout. I mean, it's been going for about 45 seconds already, this, and it's just sat there. I mean, the other obvious thing is to change the auto boot jumper on here. I forget where it is now. It's one of those option jumpers, I think. And then it won't boot from SCSI, will it? That might be the easier solution. But having said that, even though it doesn't auto boot, it'll still have the drives in, and we haven't got. That's the problem we've got. Is they've got like multiple DH0s, multiple DH1s, etc. Yeah, getting nowhere with that. It just looks for that card forever and a day. So switch it off. I'll put the card back in. I think we'll just pull out the A2091. We've proved that it all works here. There's no issue. But we'll just test it without the 2091. It's a good idea just to test the IDE because you know, we've tested the 2091 already. Really. Yeah, there you go. It's hitting the IDE already. Look. Yeah, that's booting okay. And there we are at the desktop. Yeah, the Amiga Kit Center stuff is not installed on this. So we'll just test out the SID card, just make sure that's okay. I mean, you heard the ding there, so it's certainly receiving a reset and stuff. Where are we going now? Let's go into Deli Tracker. And as you can hear, the SID card works fine. Let's just switch the filter off, I think. It's a bit clearer. So yeah, fantastic, great work, Live 2. So another random direction change here. I'm just going to clean the slots up on this and just remove these cards. I've just ground them myself. Yeah, this board is okay in terms of reliability, but just once or twice I have had an issue where a card doesn't make a very good connection. You know, you plug something in, it doesn't boot or detect the card properly. So yeah, folded paper a few times here. Might need to be thicker than that. Let's just try it. And a bit of contact cleaner. No, it's probably alright. It's not quite thick enough. So let's just fold it one more time. And let's try that. Yeah, there we go. You push it in, it just grips. You can feel it grips lightly. And then if you go sideways, you should be very careful. You've got to be mindful of the fact that you could pull the pin if you got the paper too thick here. And you could pull it all the way across and bend it. But yeah, that's all we need to do. And you can see a little bit of oxidisation coming off there. just finish off now on the co-processor slot there. That's already had one go, but let's give it another go. You can see how dirty that was actually. Look at all the contamination that's come off those slots. Yeah, the fan's making an annoying noise on the power supply now, but hang on, yeah, look, that's booing. It worked first time. Now what was happening prior to that, just occasionally when I've put in certain cards and certain slots, it was just been a bit like sulky, not doing anything, and I would reseat one of the cards and then it would work, and it seems to vary between this slot, that one, so I think those two slots were a little bit dirty, which is no wonder because I use those slots a fair bit actually, but that has booted, as you can see there. So here's a weird one for you with this 2000. Answers down below your suggestions. If I press escape, I can quit out, and then it starts again, look. It's like the fire button's been pressed, and it isn't. So just bear with me. As soon as I'll do that again. I'm going to hit left to get exit. Hang on. Exit to workbench. Right, so the game has been exited. I'll show you again. I'll double click on it. Watch. Not touching the mouse, not touching the keyboard, not touching the joystick. It went straight in. So let's repeat that again. I know what you're thinking, a controller problem, but there isn't. And I'll try and exit out again. There we go. Right, I've exited out by pressing escape and hitting left to go exit to workbench. If we load Bubble Bobble, okay, so Bubble Bobble is loaded there. Press fire on the title screen. Okay, that was an issue on its own actually, because earlier I had that where it's fading really slowly, and I worked out I think that's just the speed of the processor and the RAM. But anyway, we press fire, we start this. Now, if there was a fire problem, you would have expected to have started the game on its own, and it didn't do, not like TimeGal did. And here, you would expect it to be firing bubbles on its own if there was a problem with the player one fire button. So I'll just move the character around a bit here, just so you can see. Look, it's not firing, it's not jumping, doesn't do anything. But anyway, if I press F10, so all we've done is load that game. We haven't done anything else. This is the weird thing with this. I'm hoping this behaves the way I'm expecting now. Launch that again. Oh, it hasn't done. See, last time it didn't do that. Last time after I loaded Bubble Bobble, that didn't happen. So, I don't know. There must be an intermittent problem related to interrupts on this, maybe. No, it hasn't started though, look. Oh, this is my point. It skips the intro. This is the difference in behaviour. Yeah, sorry, this is how it behaves. Skips the intro. I'll show you that again. Exit to workbench. But it doesn't start like it did before we loaded Bubble Bobble. Look, hang on, this time it didn't skip it. This time it didn't skip it, which is strange. But now I can press fire and we get to the title screen. And I can choose options, I can exit. But if you cold boot this and go straight into TimeGal, it always starts the game. Well, it's done it again there. We've got the intro this time again. So, I don't know. It's really weird. So I've just cleaned the edge connector up here as well. An update on the TF520 here. So this is the second TF520 I've built. I built this one off camera. You can see you've got 20 MHz O2 on there and 40 MHz crystal, and that works fine. It was thanks to Sparks UK actually, because he was the first person to test 40. I think I may have tested 40 when I did the video. I couldn't get the other one working, but you see my other one was a 6-16, it was 16 MHz, so pushing that to 40 is going to be a bit of a stretch. But 20 pushed to 40, you can do it, because the other thing is it doesn't run at 40 all the time. It's only running at 40 when certain things are not certain, you know, so it's like you have like a gap. It gives it a bit of a break in between to, you know, cool or to be able to deal with 40 MHz, you know, when it has to go to 40, you can do it for those short stretches and then it drops to 20 again. In fact, not 20, it drops to like 7.19, is it, or something like that, 7.09, I forget the exact frequency. You may be able to push these further. I wouldn't be surprised if you got like a 45 MHz crystal on there, 46 or even 47 MHz. I wouldn't be surprised if that ran at that speed actually. I may get some different sized crystals at some point and test it. Let's try that. So we've got an 8 meg, got to go faster on board in here. We've got the clock port thing here for the Amiga that you probably haven't seen, and the sensor module real-time clock that you have seen on the 1200, but that's going to be a separate video. We've got the 40 MHz TF520 here. Then we've got the Proto SID card V2 with the crystal bodged on it. That'll be another video and it will have another proper crystal by then. And we've got the AT card clone on the left hand side as well. So that's booted at the moment, but I'm just going to switch that off. But I'm leaving all that stuff in to test with just because I've been testing those specific things, but also it means that if we remove Bluster here now, so let's just carefully try and leave a Bluster out there. Single wipe socket this, I can tell, because it's very firm. which is sort of the opposite what you'd expect. You know, you probably hear that, and I've mentioned the single wipe sockets are the worst. That's true, but when you've not had chips in and out, they are very good actually generally. So we've got our Bluster here. Pin 1 is at the top, so if we just, I know you can't see it for the wire there probably, push that in, so that's a really firm fit. So primarily I think this is going to stay in here actually. I'll just leave it on this board, and if we switch it on, just give it a sec. It did just flash before you saw it. There you go, starting to boot. So all signs are it works, which is remarkable considering the board was almost on fire before when it had the wrong regulator there. So we'll just wait for that. Oh wow, it works, perfect, fantastic. So in terms of Zorro devices, well, we've got 8 meg of RAM there. That's coming from the 8 meg Gotta Go Fast RAM in the DIP slot there, you know, the 68k CPU socket. But that's adhering to auto config, so that worked. And then we also have the IDE, which we've booted off. That works. Well, so let's test the SID card. Yeah, that's working. I don't know. Anyway, that's in. So let's power that on and let's see if that boots. So I'm not sure if you can just about, you can't see the LED there, can you? I can see the LED. It did just flash. That has worked. That's incredible. And obviously look, all my drives are here. Yeah, it's doing the same thing it always does on this board, where it seems to start on its own and I can't get to the bottom of what's doing it. It's only this game. It's not a controller problem. Anyway, let's now try it with the AT card as well. So we're getting to the point where I'm going to have more cards than I've got slots actually. I mean, we've got 2 spare here, but the 8 meg that's currently in the DIP socket there, I could use the Live 2 8 meg Gotta Go Faster card. And amazingly that has worked. So it's any clues as to how much RAM? Oh, we've got 8 meg still. I think the Live 2 is probably just plonking the 8 meg in the Zorro 2 there right at the start, and everything else just gets told to shut up. Let's have a look at boards, I guess. Look at all that lot. It's pretty packed in there, isn't it now? A2630, 4 meg, A2091, 64k, that's just going to be for the SCSI. 2 meg of fast memory. What's providing that? That's probably the Live 2's, no, it says Commodore though. Maybe the hang on, the A2630's provided 4 meg. Oh, the 2 meg must be from the A590, which is interesting. Then the Octan's obviously IDE, and then we've got 0 there, 69, 0, 69, 2 meg at 69. So the 2 meg's coming from the Live 2's board, isn't it? Yeah, so we've ended up with the 8 meg of RAM split throughout all those things. But nevertheless, it's impressive, isn't it, that all of that is working together with the Bluster. No issues at all. Now, I'm not sure if any of these devices, the cards I've got in, are e-int devices. We'd really need something with e-int just to be 100% sure, I guess. It could boot from floppy and we'll run test kit on there, just test that 8 meg RAM range. I mean, obviously, RAM, is it really going to be related to Bluster? Well, it is in terms of the arbitration of stuff, isn't it? It's all about the timing and stuff. So if all that tests out okay, with other tests we've just done, I think it's a pretty safe bet that the Bluster is seemingly a one-to-one representation of the original Bluster. Because we've got crazy amount of hardware in here and it's working. Alright, you know, I haven't got exotic stuff. There's so many Zorro cards out there. I am sure, you know, there could be an issue. Let's just connect that up. Yeah, there could be an issue with something somewhere. But some of these things, like booting with Bluster on the 2091, you'll know, is an absolute pain in the you-know-what. So, like, the very fact that works reassures me that I don't think there's an issue. So there we go, it's gone around the full range there. So I'll test some games and demos, play around with the SID card, etc. And there we go, all working fine, just the same in the Rev 6. I've tested lots of demos and games across both boards here, no problems at all. So I have to admit, I'm really impressed. This works perfectly, absolutely perfectly in a Rev 4 board and perfectly in the Rev 6.2. So a huge thanks to Matt, Live 2. It was really nice to have a look at this, and he's done a really good job of this. I know, as you saw some of the code earlier on, you know, he had some concerns that maybe there was some stuff he was speculating on, couldn't test it, he didn't have an A2630, you know, something that sat in the processor slot there, you know, the co-processor slot. So I think we've proved without a doubt that it seems rock solid stable. I've had no issues at all with any of the A2000 boards here, any of the hardware that I've tested this with. And we did test some DIPS stuff as well, things that go in the DIP socket that simulate the auto config stuff as well, and those all seem to work. So yeah, excellent job, Matt. Really, really pleased. I was lucky I did not destroy the CPLD or the PCB with the regulator earlier on. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, please see the Ko-fi and Patreon links down below. Any little donation means that the channel keeps going for the foreseeable future. So yeah, much appreciated. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next video.